It is my distinct privilege and honor to invite our Rabbi Emerita, Rabbi Deborah Bronstein, to carefully ascend the ramp and to come over to help us learn about this difficult Torah portion. As everyone says, it's a B'nai Mitzvah favorite. So we're going to learn about this Torah portion. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll tell you the truth. Rabbi Green asked me if I would preach tonight, and I said, do I want to talk about leprosy, or do I want to talk about Shabbat HaGadol? And you might want to know what Shabbat HaGadol is, and I'm going to tell you. And I said, what do you think? Shabbat HaGadol. So tonight is Shabbat HaGadol, or the Great Sabbath, the Sabbath that falls immediately before Passover. The first Shabbat HaGadol took place in Egypt on the 10th of Nisan, 5 days before the Israelite Exodus. We are told in Exodus 12:13, each household should take a lamb for each home, and according to tradition, each family took a lamb and sacrificed that lamb and put the blood on the lintel of the door. And this really shocked the Egyptians, because for them, the lamb was a deity. And probably it really shocked the Israelites too, because they'd gotten into the ways of Egypt. And so this was really a big act, a major act. A lead Orthodox rabbi from the turn of the 19th century named the Chatam Sofer wrote, on this day, the Jewish people fully returned, made teshuvah, to their commitment and faith in God. As God is called Gadol, great, therefore the Jewish people who once again embraced God earned the title Gadol as well. Hence the Shabbat is called Shabbat Gadol. There are other reasons why it's given this name. One is that, which I love, is that if you come tomorrow morning, you'll hear the Haftarah portion. It ends with the words, Hinei Anochi Sholeach Lachem et Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem HaGadol Hanorah. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And what day of that is that? Does anyone know? The Messiah, when the Messiah will come. There's another reason for the name Shabbat HaGadol, is that rabbis traditionally, classically, have spent all of Shabbat afternoon preaching these Gadol sermons, these really long, endless, long sermons about the details of the Seder and how to keep Pesach. And I'm not going to give that sermon tonight. So I have a question to ask you. You don't have to show the answer. You can just think the answer. Has your mind ever wandered during services? Okay, how about this? Have you ever felt like you were mumbling through the prayers and not having the prayers sing through you? Some of you might feel that way. Have you ever felt distracted during a sermon? Rob better say no. I never knew how common this was until I was in 6th grade. After all, my father was the rabbi of the synagogue that I grew up in, so no matter where I sat, people felt obligated, I think, to sit really attentively and quietly nearby me. Maybe I tell on them, I don't know what the thing was, but I never knew that anyone's mind wandered during services until my dad and our family went on sabbatical when I was in 6th grade, and he was asked to preach at Rabbi Shalman's congregation in Chicago, and I was sitting behind these women. They were immaculately dressed and a lot of makeup, and they really sang during the service. And then the minute my dad started speaking, they took their shoes off and they started talking to each other. Chat, 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 chat. And then, to top it all off, in those days, and maybe some of you remember this, the rabbi would stand in the back, and everybody would walk by the rabbi and shake, it was all he at the time, the rabbi's hands, and say something back and forth. And these two women came through, and one of the women said, "Rabbi Bronstein, I have never heard a sermon like that before. It'll be with me for the rest of my life." And her friend said the same thing, basically. And I thought, you know what? All compliments aren't true. It was like the first time I'd imagined that happening, or that people didn't listen to the sermon, or that my dad's sermons weren't the best sermons. So it was a shock. Now let me ask you another question, and you can raise your hand if you want, but you don't feel bound, whatever you feel like. Can you recall a Seder that you sat through as a child or as an adult that used some gray or blue Haggadah, that used words that were incomprehensible and mostly in Hebrew that you didn't understand, or even a great Haggadah that was rushed through like, dinner. Has anybody experienced that? Okay, I see that some people have experienced that. Okay, how many of you can recall going to a group Seder where everything made sense, but there was no heart to it? Yeah. Okay, well, while being taught the details of the Haggadah is important, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev used to say that the most important thing is feeling connected to the story, our own kavanah, our own intentionality. And that as much as I'd like to teach the details of the Seder, that our own kavanah is critical. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev was an early Hasidic rabbi who is known for his deep love of God and his deep love for the people Israel. He wrote about how we might consider the connections as we read and sing our ways through the Haggadah. There is a beautiful book of Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev's Torah teachings called God at the Center, and if you like Hasidic type literature, it's a wonderful book. It's by David Blumenthal. In the chapter about Passover and the Seder, Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev points to a strange variation found in some Haggadot. In most Haggadahs, and probably in the one that you'll be using this Passover, the Seder virtually begins with the words, Halach ma'anya, this is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. However, in some versions of the Haggadah, it says, this matzah is like the bread of affliction. Levi Yitzchak points out to the question, what is the bread of affliction, or what in our current lives is like the bread of affliction? In other words, in what way are our lives today like slavery? And he turns the reader's attention to a discussion in the Talmud where it says, when the Jews do the will of their parent in heaven, they are called children, but when they don't do God's will, they are called slaves. This comment really grabs the attention of the sages, and they say, why would Jews not do God's will? I mean, that's kind of weird. And the answer is not that they don't do God's will so much as they do it without any kavanah. They just slog around one step after another, no connection, just waiting to get till dinner. They just fulfill the details like a slave would do, not with joy and connection as a child would do. Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev is encouraging us to approach the Seder as a vital event with loving and childlike eyes, as a new journey every year from slavery to freedom. The details, I believe, and certainly Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev believed, were important and should be taken seriously, but our approach to celebrating the Seder is critical. So if you haven't figured out what you're going to do yet for the Seder, find a Haggadah that grabs you if you're the leader, or push the leader to find a Haggadah that grabs you, or go online and find interesting readings or quotes and interrupt yourself at the Seder with more discussion, or if you're invited somewhere for Seder, interrupt the Seder leader. You know, Rabbi Akiva in the 2nd century used to throw popcorn at the Seder, and people would say, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Oh, you asked me why. Well, let me tell you an answer for Passover. That we just have to really get into it. We have to really get into it." So I'm hoping that for all of you, that let us be like children and not like slaves as we celebrate this year. This is my hope for all of us here at Har Hashem and everywhere.
May it be. Thank you.